The ballroom at the Harrington Hotel smelled like old money and fresh roses. And somewhere in my clutch purse was a folded envelope that was about to change everything. My mother-in-law was already smiling at me from across the room. That particular smile she saved just for me. The one that never quite reached her eyes. She had no idea what I was carrying. None of them did. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to where this really started. My name is Claire. I was 26 years old when I married my husband, Daniel Whitmore, in a small ceremony at his parents' estate in Greenwich, Connecticut. I was a registered nurse at the time, working 12-hour shifts at Mercy General, eating granola bars in supply closets between rounds, coming home with my feet aching and my heart still somehow full. I loved my job. I was good at it, and I was naive enough to believe that being good at something was enough to earn respect. Daniel's family was old money. Not the kind that talks about money, the kind that simply assumes everyone else has less of it and quietly arranges the world around that assumption. His mother, Margaret, was a woman who wore her pearls to breakfast and referred to other people's careers as little jobs. His father, Richard, didn't say much. But what he did say always landed like a verdict. And his sister, Brooke, was 23 and already engaged to a hedge fund manager and already looking at me the way you look at a smudge on a clean mirror. I had grown up in Akron, Ohio. My father drove a delivery truck. My mother worked the front desk at a dental office. We weren't poor, but we were firmly, proudly ordinary. I had put myself through nursing school on loans and 2 part-time jobs. And I had done it without asking anyone for a single dollar. That was something I held on to. That was mine. Daniel and I met at a mutual friend's birthday party in the city. He was kind that night. Funny. He asked me real questions about my work and actually listened to the answers. He said his mother would love me. He said his family valued hard work above everything else. He was wrong about both of those things. The first time I met Margaret, she shook my hand and said, "Oh, nursing. How practical." She said it the way you'd say how unfortunate. I laughed it off. I told myself she was just formal, old-fashioned. I told myself she would come around once she knew me better. She did not come around. Within the first year of our marriage, I had learned a handful of things. I learned that Margaret hosted a dinner party on the first Friday of every month, and attendance was not optional. I learned that at these dinners, every woman at the table was expected to discuss her charity work, her home renovations, or her children, and that my contributions about patient care and hospital protocol were met with the kind of polite silence usually reserved for someone who has accidentally used the wrong fork. I learned that when Margaret introduced me to her friends, she said, "This is Daniel's wife. Claire and nothing else?" As if my last name, my profession, my entire existence before Daniel were details too minor to mention. I also learned that Daniel noticed none of this. Or maybe he noticed and chose not to see. I've turned that question over in my mind many times since then. And I still don't have a clean answer. What I do know is that I kept trying. I brought flowers to those Friday dinners. I asked Margaret about her garden, her club, her opinions on things I had no interest in. I helped Brooke address her wedding invitations by hand, 400 of them on a Saturday. I should have spent sleeping after a night shift. I smiled through the comments about how Daniel looked tired, how the apartment seemed small, how young couples these days really didn't understand the importance of a proper home. I smiled and I cleared the plates and I told myself this was just what it meant to be part of a family. Then came the night of the Whitmore Foundation Gala. The foundation was Richard's legacy project, a charitable organization that funded medical research across the Northeast. Every October, they held a black tie event at the Harrington Hotel in Manhattan. It was the social centerpiece of the Whitmore family calendar, the night when everyone who mattered in their world gathered in one room. And the Whitmores stood at the center of it, like they had been placed there by nature itself. Daniel told me about the gala 2 weeks before it happened. the same way he told me about most things briefly. While looking at his phone, "It's a big night for the family," he said. "My mother has a surprise for us. She's been planning something." I asked what kind of surprise. He said, "I think you'll appreciate it." I should have pressed. I should have asked more questions. Instead, I bought a navy blue dress and scheduled a blowout, and assumed that whatever Margaret had planned was simply some new way to display the Whitmore family's generosity to an audience of people who already admired them. I was not entirely wrong about that, the night of the gala. I got ready in the bedroom while Daniel sat in the living room watching something on TV. I remember looking at myself in the mirror for a long time. I had worked a double shift 2 days before. I had dark circles I'd covered with concealer. I had a patient, a woman named Dolores, 67 years old, admitted for congestive heart failure, who had squeezed my hand that morning and said, "You saved my life." Sweetheart, I had carried that with me like something precious all day. I thought about Dolores as I put my earrings in. I thought about how what I did mattered. I thought that was enough. We arrived at the Harrington at 7. The ballroom was already full, crystal glasses catching the chandelier light. Women in gowns. Men in tuxedos. The particular hum of a room full of people who are comfortable being admired. Margaret found us within 30 seconds of our arrival. She was wearing emerald green and a smile that I now recognize as the smile of someone who has already won. "Claire," she said, taking my hands. "You look lovely." "Dear, are you ready for this evening?" I said I was. She patted my hands and said, "Wonderful. I've been looking forward to this for months." The dinner was beautiful. 7 courses. Estrinkquadel. Speeches about the foundation's work that year. I sat between Daniel and a woman named Catherine who asked me what I did and then, when I told her I was a nurse, said, "Oh, we need more of those," in the tone of someone complimenting a useful appliance. Daniel laughed at something Richard said from across the table. Brooke and her husband talked about their new house in Westport. I drank my wine slowly and reminded myself I was there because I loved my husband and I was part of this family. Between the 4th and 5th course, Margaret stood and tapped her glass. The room went quiet. She gave a short speech about the foundation. She thanked the guests. She talked about Richard's vision and the family's commitment to medical excellence. She talked about building a lasting legacy. And then she turned and looked directly at me. And something in her expression shifted just slightly, just enough for me to feel it before I understood it. "I also want to take this moment," she said, "to acknowledge a change within our family. As some of you know, my son Daniel has been patient and devoted for many years. And now, he will be free to build the life and the partnership that he truly deserves." She reached into the fold of her wrap and withdrew an envelope. She set it on the table in front of me. "With love," she said, and sat back down. The room was silent for exactly 3 seconds. I know because I counted them. I looked at the envelope. I looked at Daniel. He was looking at his plate. I picked up the envelope and opened it. Divorce papers. Fully prepared. Professionally drafted divorce papers. With Daniel's signature already on them. I heard someone near me inhale sharply. I heard the string quartet begin playing again. Softly, as if someone had given them a signal, I heard my own heartbeat. Very loud. Very steady. I want to tell you I felt devastated in that moment. And some part of me did some quiet part that had genuinely believed, even then, that things could be different. That love was enough. That I could earn my place at this table through sheer effort and goodwill. That part of me folded up very small and went somewhere deep, but the rest of me, the part that had worked night shifts alone, the part that had held the hands of strangers in their worst moments, the part that had built every single thing I had from scratch, that part went very still and very clear. I set the papers down on the table. I smoothed them flat with my palm. I picked up my evening bag and opened it. And I took out my own envelope. Margaret was watching me. So was Daniel. So was every person at that table. I unfolded my envelope and I set its contents beside the divorce papers. It was a letter. An offer letter, printed on official letterhead. Dated 10 days prior. An offer for the position of clinical nurse manager at Harrington Prestige Medical Group, one of the most respected private healthcare networks on the East Coast. Base salary $114,000 annually. Plus benefits. Plus a signing bonus. The position had been offered to me after a 6-month interview process that I had told absolutely no one about. Because I had learned by then that some things are better kept to yourself until they're certain, I had not accepted it yet. I had been waiting because some part of me was still hoping things would change. But sitting at that table, with those divorce papers in front of me, I picked up the pen that Margaret had thoughtfully included in the envelope, and I signed the divorce papers. Clearly. Calmly. With the same hands I used to start IVs and hold someone's wrist when they were frightened. Then I stood up. Thank you. Margaret. I said. And my voice was steady. I've been waiting for permission to do this for 2 years. I picked up my offer letter. I folded it. I put it back in my bag. I turned to Daniel. He was still not looking at me. I hope she was worth it. I said quietly. I had suspected there was someone else for about 8 months. I never said it out loud until that moment. I set my napkin on the table, picked up my clutch, and walked out of the ballroom of the Harrington Hotel without looking back. My heels clicked on the marble floor of the lobby, and I walked out into the October air, and I stood on the sidewalk and I breathed. A taxi stopped without me even raising my hand. As if the city itself had decided to cooperate. Here is what I did not know when I walked out of that ballroom. I did not know that 3 people at that table had recorded the moment on their phones, including the moment Margaret presented the envelope, and including the moment I stood up and spoke. I did not know that by the time I was in that taxi, the video was already in motion, shared first within that room's circle, and then beyond it, because that is what happens when you humiliate someone quietly, and they refuse to be quiet about it. I did not know that 2 of the people at that dinner were colleagues of Richard's from the hospital board, men who had been recruiting for a senior clinical position for months, and that watching a nurse remain composed under that kind of pressure while producing an offer letter from a DCZ competitor had made a significant impression on them. But that all came later. What I want to tell you about first is the weeks after, I moved out of our apartment and into a sublet in Brooklyn that a colleague helped me find. It was small, a 1-bedroom on the 4th floor of a walk-up, with a window that looked out onto a fire escape and a slice of sky. I ate cereal for dinner more nights than I want to admit. I called my mother in Akron and she cried a little, and I cried a little and she said come home for Thanksgiving and I said I would. I went back to work. I accepted the clinical nurse manager position. I started on a Monday morning and I walked in with my badge and my good shoes, and I introduced myself to the staff I would be overseeing. And something settled into place in my chest that I recognized as rightness, as alignment, as this is where I was always going. The divorce was finalized 11 weeks later. Daniel did not contest anything. He did not call. The only communication I received was through the attorneys. And it was brief and procedural and final. Margaret sent a card. A handwritten card on cream stationery with her monogram at the top. It said, I hope you understand this was for Daniel's happiness. I wish you well in your nursing. I still have that card. I keep it because it is a useful reminder of what certain people are capable of. And also because the phrase, your nursing, still makes me want to laugh. I did not respond. About 2 months after the gala, I got a call from a woman named Dr. Pate, Evelyn Marsh. She was a cardiologist, and one of the most respected names in her field in the Northeast, and she had been at that dinner in October. We met for coffee in Midtown on a Wednesday morning, and she told me she had watched what happened at that table very carefully. She told me that the way I handled that moment told her more about my character than any interview could. She told me she was building out an advisory team for a new patient care initiative, and she wanted me on it. I sat across from Dr. Marsh in that coffee shop, and I thought about every Friday night dinner I had spent trying to make Margaret love me. I thought about 400 wedding envelopes addressed by hand. I thought about how practical and your nursing and Daniel looking at his plate while his mother presented my eviction from my own marriage as a dinner party event. Then I said yes. Because here's the thing about being underestimated by people who measure your worth against their bank accounts and their address books. They are always doing you a favor. They are always, without knowing it, setting you free. Every comment about your little job, every smile that doesn't reach the eyes, every moment, they signal that you are a guest in your own life. All of it is fuel. All of it is clarity. All of it is pointing you exactly toward the door. The work with Dr. Marsh's initiative led to a feature in a healthcare publication. The feature led to speaking invitations. The speaking invitations led to connections I am still building today. My father called me after he read the article. He was quiet for a moment, and then he said, "Kid, I always knew." And I had to put the phone down for a second because that kind of love, the uncomplicated, non-transactional kind, the kind that has never once required me to earn it, is still the thing I am most grateful for. I still work in nursing. I will always work in nursing. Not because it is practical, not because it is what I could get, but because I chose it deliberately at 19 years old and I would choose it again today. And every day I go to work, I am in a room with people who need someone skilled and steady and present. And I get to be that person. That is not a small thing. That is not a consolation prize. That is the whole point. Last fall, almost exactly 2 years after that night at the Harrington, I was at a medical conference in Boston. I was there as a presenter, speaking on a panel about patient outcomes and clinical staffing. After the panel, a woman came up to me. She was about my age, maybe a little younger, and she had the look of someone who is carrying something heavy and trying not to show it. She told me she had looked me up after seeing my name on the program. She told me she had seen the video from the gala. Yes, it had traveled that far, that long. She told me she was in a situation where she felt invisible, where she felt like no matter how hard she worked, the people around her had already decided who she was. I thought about what to say to her for a moment. I said they don't get to decide that. That was never their job. The only person qualified to determine your worth is you. And the work you do every day that no one sees. And the patients whose names you remember. And the small dignities you extend to people when there is absolutely nothing in it for you. That is the accounting that matters. Everything else is noise. She nodded. She looked a little less like she was carrying something. I thought about Dolores, squeezing my hand in that hospital room. I thought about the fire escape outside my sublet window and the slice of sky. I thought about walking out of a ballroom in October, with my heels clicking on marble, and the cold air on my face, and the absolute certainty, for the first time in 2 years, that I was walking in the right direction. I picked up my conference badge from the table. My name was printed on it, plain and clear, with my title underneath. It was enough. It was more than enough. It was everything.